So the first thing that we do want to make sure of is that we have the Kami Chrome extension installed on our device. Just because a couple of the features I will be showing off here do require that. So there's a link for it in the chat if you'll need to install it still. So that takes you to the web store page here. It will say add to Chrome here. You just click on the button, add that in, and then everything should be good to go. Once that's in, we can go back to what should be a very familiar Google Classroom page here. So as the teacher, we go to the Classwork tab, and then under the Create button here, there'll be a nice Kami assignment option. We can click on that. That's going to let us make our Google Classroom Kami assignment. So I can add in my title here. So this will be Kami Demo Assignment 1A as my first one for the day. We can add any instructions we want to into the text box here. We've got the same options for selecting the class or classes it goes out to, customizing the point value, due date, schedule time, and topic if we use those to organize our classroom. Then we can add our file either from Google Drive or the device local storage. So I'm going to jump into my Google Drive here, go to my demo templates folder, and grab our ELA and math demo template. We'll open that up. That attaches here as a Kami PDF. Now you can attach Google Docs, Google Slides, PowerPoint, Word, image files, and kind of the common document types. And when you assign it as a Kami assignment, we will convert it into a PDF so the annotation tools can work on it. And we can also assign out PDFs we've annotated ourselves, which I'll show how to do a little later, to give our students any extra instructions or feedback we need to set up for them. When we attach the file here, it defaults to making a copy for each student. So every student has their own individual file that they'll annotate and turn in, but we do have the option to set them to share one copy for a collaborative assignment, or set it so they cannot edit the file if we have a resource for them to read through, but that we don't need them to annotate themselves. Once that's set up and ready to go, we have our Kami assignment specific options in the bottom here. So this first one, send Kami instructions to students. This pushes out a one-page Google Doc that walks the students through adding the extension onto their device, opening the assignment up through Classroom, signing into Kami with their school Google account and setting up as a student if it's their first time doing so, and then turning the file in at the end. The second option here, add links for mobile devices. This attaches an extra link/button to the assignment that is designed for users on any form of mobile device, so iPad, iPhone, Android tablet, basically any device that relies on browser apps for the internet. We unfortunately can't add the extension in. So this is our way of giving them the same one-click open and turn in functionality the extension will give to students on, say, Chromebooks or normal laptops. And the last option here is the feature restrictions. So these allow us to customize the toolbar for an assignment for our students. So if we want to test our students' understanding of the vocabulary for the subject, we maybe want to switch off the dictionary tool. We can limit them to just the highlighters if we don't think they'll need the strike through or underline options for markup. We can remove the video and screen capture comment if we only want them to rely on the tools that don't use the device camera, and we can basically customize the toolbar to as many or as few of the tools we think the students will need to complete the assignment, and only the selected ones would show up for them. But I'll set them all on so I can show them all off for you. We hit OK. Everything looks set up and ready to go. So we hit assign, and we'll push that out to our students. Are there any questions on kind of the assignment creation process just while this loads? Alrighty, in that case, we can see we've created our assignment, and the send your students this link tip. This is just another way to access the one-page Google Doc I mentioned we can push out as part of the assignment instructions. So just to show that off, simple, easy steps to set everything up on the student's device, sign in, turn it in once they've completed the work, and then some tutorial resources here to help them out as well, and a video guide covering the same steps if you've got students who'd find that easier to follow. So now that that's set up, I'll hit Open in Classroom here so I get the assignment page ready for later. I'll switch over to the student side here. So we can see our stream's been updated with the new demo assignment. We can click on that to open it up, and the student will then see the one-page Google Doc, the Open with Kami link if we've pushed that out, and their file is automatically added to the Your Work section in Google Drive. Got the student's first and last name at the front for the individual copy, and then opening it up is as simple as either clicking the Open with Kami link if that's been pushed out for them, or if they click on the file itself, the extension will give them the Open with Kami button in the top right here. We click on that to open the file up. That's going to load up in Kami for us, so we'll get our ELA and math reading exercise here. As mentioned, I have added some extra comments to the file ahead of time to give the students some instructions, so some audio comments and text comments to help them work with the text on the page. Further down, we have some extra questions added in using text boxes to give the student a more kind of enhanced exercise. And there's one question I've struck out because I would, for example, be going over it with them in class, so I don't need them to answer it here. And then once the students got their assignment file, read through our annotations, they have the wonderful toolbar here to start working on making their own. So starting from the top, we have the Select Annotations tools. So we've got the regular select cursor, which we can use to select the text on the page if we need to copy and paste it for quotes, for example, or if we need to manipulate any annotations we've created. We have the Hand tool, which we can use to just click and drag on the page to scroll through it using the mouse if our students find that easier for navigating. And if I just make some quick kind of test drawings on the page here, the last option for it, Select Annotations, lets us grab all of the annotations in an area, move them around as a group. We can customize them as a group, so we can change the color of all of the annotations selected, and for these drawings, I can change the line thickness and transparency. We can also copy and paste the annotations if we need to replicate them somewhere else in the document, or we can select them all again and hit delete to quickly clear that area of the page off. Next up, we have the dictionary tool. So with this, I can click on any word in the document and it will give me the Oxford English Dictionary definition. So for science or maths, if the students come across a term they haven't seen before, they have got a way to easily look it up and find out what it means. And the last of these navigation tools here, the text-to-speech tool, this allows us to have the document read aloud to the students. So starting it off is as simple as either pressing the Read Page button in the toolbar, start from the top of the page, read through all of the text down to the bottom of our selected page, and we can then scroll to the next page and press it again to continue reading. Or if there's a specific point in the text we want to start from, so maybe I want to skip the directions and title, we can click into the text directly to start from that point. So I just need to switch my audio over so you can hear this. You won't need to do this step. This is just me, or what I need to do to make sure you can hear it for the presentation. So clicking here.
Craig watched his older sister, Riley, and her friend Liz race up and down the lake on their skates, dodging the other hockey players. Fire skate blades looked like silver smoke.
And I'll just hit stop there, or again, it does read through from the point we've clicked to the bottom of the page. While it is reading through the text, we can use the arrows in the toolbar or the arrow keys on our keyboard to jump back or forward a sentence as needed. We can also loop the currently highlighted section of text that's being read. So when I clicked here, it highlighted the first sentence, so we could loop that over, or I can click and drag to select a larger area, maybe the first 2 paragraphs, and just have it loop that if I'm trying to memorize it maybe for an exam. The last two options we have here are the voice packs and speed options. So we can switch to another voice pack based on the ones installed on the device if we have a voice we'd prefer to hear the text being read out in. So I could switch it to any of the Chrome OS US English versions I have installed on my Chromebook. So I can switch it to English 5 here, select a smaller portion of the text. You can just read that out for me. And if you do have a section of text written in another language, so if we had a copy of this story translated into Spanish, for example, I could switch to Chrome OS Español, so a Spanish voice pack, and it could read the Spanish text aloud far more fluently than if we just brute force it with an English one. However, I do have to caveat this doesn't work as a full translator. So if we switch to it and try and read the story here, it would just read the story out to us in a Spanish accent. And lastly, I can change the speed the document's being read out at. So I can dial it up to 1.2, 1.3 times speed if we just need to skim through the document, or I can slow it down to 0.8, 0.7, or maybe slower if we have got students who'd benefit from the lowered reading speed to help with their comprehension. And we've got the reset option on the far right there if we need to get it back to normal speed. Next up, we have the markup tools. So these are the first way that either we as the teacher or the students can start marking up the document to note any important information or answer their questions. So we've got the text highlighter, strike through, and underline tools. So these all work in a very similar way. We simply select the color we want to use from our 9-color palette here, click and drag over the text, and we'll highlight it, strike it through, or underline it in our selected color. And we can set a different color for each option if we're going to be using them all and want to differentiate the markup. So I can easily mark out any parts of the text relevant for my answer. And if we need to mark up a section of the page that doesn't have text embedded, so these all attach to the text in the PDF, but if we need to highlight, say, a blank area or a diagram, we have got a box highlighter available here, which does share its color with the text highlighter. So we can mark up our document as much or as little as needed. And then we're good to go there. And just to show, we have got the 9-color palette we can select from here, but if we aren't happy with that color selection, we can go to the More Colors option at the bottom, select the color we want to change. So maybe I'll switch that for a slightly darker orange. We hit Save, and we can see we've got our new color in the color palette, and that's automatically set as the selected color for the current tool. Are there any questions on the tools I've covered so far before I dive into the comments? Alrighty, in that case, we'll jump into the comment tools here as the first way we can start adding our own content to the PDFs rather than just working with what's already there. So starting from the top, we have our regular text comment. If I scroll down to one of our questions here, I can click to anchor that to the page. It'll create the comment box in the right-hand margin and I can start typing. So I'd find my answer in paragraphs 10 and 11. We can hit enter, and that comment is then saved into the margin or the right-hand margin of the page for us. We can click back in if we need to make any changes. So I might switch that to 9 and 11 or 10. Hit enter there. We've got our answer saved. We can also add replies underneath if we want to attach, say, more information to the answer without changing the original. Or as the teacher, you can reply to a student's comment to add in any feedback you need to. And just to show, with both the text comments here and the reply comment boxes, we do have a voice typing option available. So once we click on the microphone, it transcribes anything I say here into the comment box. So if you've got students who will find it easier to give a verbal answer, but they still need to get it down on the page, we can accommodate that here. And then when we hit enter, that's added as the comment as well. Next up, we have the voice comment. So when I click to create that here, this automatically begins recording the audio through the device microphone. So if we want to give verbal instructions or feedback to the students in place of, say, a paragraph of text, or if you have got students who will find giving a verbal answer in place of a text or written answer easier, or maybe for a languages exercise, we want the students to read a passage aloud so we can check their pronunciation, they can record that here, save it to the document, and then we can play that back when we're grading. And just to show, we have got 5 minutes of recording time for each comment, but there's no limit to the number we can add to the document. So I can stop that here to save it, and I could continue adding more. So one way we've seen this used for multiple choice questions, especially for math, is because the text-to-speech tool can sometimes struggle to pick the equations up. The teacher might actually go in and record themselves reading the question out, so the students hear it in a familiar voice. In a similar vein to the voice comments, we have the direct video comments. So when I click to create this, it begins recording both the audio through the microphone and the video through the device camera. So hello again, everyone. So we can use this if we want to give that same verbal instruction or feedback to the students and have that face-to-face interaction with them, especially if we're working with them remotely. Or if you have, say, a whiteboard in the classroom you want to demonstrate an example on, you can actually aim the device camera at that, record yourself talking through the example, save it to the document, and these students then have that to refer back to if they get stuck. And because this relies on the default camera for the device, you can switch that in the Chrome settings if you're working with, say, a document camera. You could then record yourself writing that out, and these students could follow along and complete it inside of Kami. And just to show here, we have got a 20-minute time limit for each video comment. So you can record a much longer explanation as needed. And there's again no limit to the number we can add to the document. So you could record the entire lesson in 20-minute blocks and have that all available for the student to watch back as needed. And then once again, when we're finished, we hit done. And the comment is saved onto the document here. And we then have the last of our comment tools, which is the screen capture comment here. So when I click to create this, it's going to give me the share my screen dialog here. So I can specify my entire screen, an application window, or the individual Chrome tab I'm working in. Once I've selected that and hit share, it begins recording the audio through the device microphone, the video through the device camera in the little picture-in-picture window here, which we can close if we don't want being recorded, or just move it around if it's covering text on the page. And it will record any action that we take inside of the selected screen sharing window. So I can use this to record an in-app demonstration of how I want the students to approach a question, which tools I want them to use, and how they could lay the answer out. Or the students can use this to show me each step of their working while they're going through the problem, and we can easily follow along and see where they might have gotten a little off track, how we can kind of help them understand the question. Or I've seen it used in social studies for presentations. If you want them to annotate a map with, say, a historical event and its progression, they can draw that on and talk through it rather than giving the text summary at the end. Now, unfortunately, I can't fully show off creating one of these as Chromebooks don't allow for screen sharing sources from two places. So if I try and record it, it drops the Zoom call screen sharing. But what I can do is scroll down to one of the math questions here and show you one I added to the document earlier. Alrighty, students. So for question 8 here, I would like you to, as a little extended exercise, convert each of these answers so that both fractions have the same denominator. So what I mean by that is, if we scroll down to our whiteboard page here, let's say I have, in this case, we'll go with 1/2 and 1/4. Now I want you to convert it so that they would both be, we're going to go for the larger one, so it'll be quarters here. So we're going to take our first fraction. So we want to get the same denominator. So to make 2 into 4, we multiply it by 2. So we get our 1 over 2. We multiply the top by 2 as well as the bottom by 2. So we get our 2 over 4. And I'll just pause that there, as the rest of it's just me doing the same thing with one of the other tools. But that's kind of the simplest way we can use the screen capture comment to show off an example for the teachers or for the students. Let me switch that back over. Are there any questions on the comment tools, as I know I have just thrown a lot at you there? Alrighty, in that case, I'll jump into the text box tool next. So as we can see, all of the comment tools populate themselves in the right-hand margin of the page. But if we do want to add our text directly onto the document, I can click to create my text box on the page here, expand it out to fit the area I want to type into, and then I can just start typing. So for the question here, I can give my answer as yes, I would. Sounds fun. And then I can either leave it once I've typed it, or when we create the text box, it will give us this text box toolbar at the top of the page here. And this gives me all of the standard font formatting and text emphasis options I might want to use to customize it. We can also add in subscript and superscripts if we're doing math working in the text box, though we have got a nice option for that a little further along in the toolbar. We can add in numbered lists, bullet points, and the indenting options for those. We can also change the line alignment as needed, add in links if we have an external article or video we want to link for the students. We have our formula tool, which I will jump back to in a moment, as that is a subset of the equation tool. So those are pretty nice to show off together. We have emojis available, as we know that some teachers do like to use those for grading. We have the reset formatting option here. So if you've customized the text box heavily and then need to get it back to the defaults for maybe the next one, we can reset that here. And just to show, we do have the same voice typing functionality available in the text boxes as we do in the text comments. And that will expand the text box if we do type over it at any point. And lastly, we can rotate the text box around. So if we're doing, say, a graphing exercise and need to line the text up with the axes, we can easily set that up here. We then have the equation tool. So if I scroll back down to question 8 here, I can click to create that on the document here. And the equation box is a specialized text box designed for our math and science use cases. So once I've created that here, I can click on the insert symbols option in the toolbar here, and it will give me the option of selecting and inserting any of our kind of math symbols here. So we've got the standard mathematical and scientific ones we might want to use, some of the more advanced ones, and we do also have music notes available, as music paper is one of our blank page options. But to start off, if I wanted to do the same conversion I showed in the screen capture comment here, but typed out, I can click to add in my fraction. So we get our 3 over 4, which then equals, I can add the fraction in again, we get 3 multiplied by 2 over 4 multiplied by 2, which then equals our 6/8. So you can use the slash key on the keyboard to quick insert the fraction there. And then I can go does not equal 4 over 8. So we know that A is not the correct answer here. So this works very nicely if we're working on kind of simple single line math problems here, or if we are working on, say, either physics, if we just want to type out the formula we want to use. And you can add in letters for algebra, or as I can show here, chemistry. So we get C2 plus 2O, subscript again 2. That's the fraction, not the subscript. 2 And then we've got the reaction arrow here. So we get our 2CO, one last subscript 2. And the symbols highlighted in green at the top are just the most recent ones we've used, so we can quickly reuse those as needed. Now, the one limitation to the equation tool is that, unfortunately, you can't add more than one line of working into each equation box. So it works nicely for single line problems like this. But if we did need to show, say, all of the steps of working for a more advanced algebra or physics problem, we'd either need to make an individual equation box for each row, or we can drop down to where I've got the kind of physics question here. So we've got a ball rolling down a 1 meter slope in 2 seconds. What's the velocity we're looking for? And if I go back to our text box here, I can resize this to suit my needs. And then if we click on the formula tool in the text box toolbar, that creates an equation box inside of the text box for us. So I can create that here. And then if I click on the kind of pi symbol in the math toolbar, I get the same symbol palette we had for the equation tool. So we know our formula is V equals D fraction T. I can drop down a line, recreate my formula. So you do have to exit the formula box, drop down a line, and then recreate the formula box on the next row, but I accidentally hit the share button there, so we'd get our V equals 1m / key for the fraction shortcut to S. Drop down one more line, formula box again, we get our V equals 0.5 meters per second. I can hold Shift 6 for my exponent to the -1. And then we've got all of our math working for that question neatly organized in a single text box. We can easily move it around as a group if we need to reorder it or add any extra lines for working. And it lines up nice and neatly, but we've still been able to format it using the equation tool symbols. Alrighty. Next up, we have the drawing tool. So this lets us free draw onto the page just by clicking and dragging with the mouse. So I can add in a curve for the graph here, or I can use this for handwriting my answers. So I can handwrite it using the mouse here, or if the students are working from touchscreen devices, or if you're working from one and you have a stylus, or you're happy to draw it with your finger, you are able to do that as well. So I can handwrite out my answer here, and I'll leave it up to you which one of those is more legible. And one last trick with the drawing tool is if you hold down Shift when you start drawing, it will hold it in a straight line for us. So I could easily sketch a line onto my graph here, or use this as a freehand strike through or underline tool for working with the text. And we have the stroke thickness, transparency, and the same color palette for the drawing tool that we selected for the markup tools, which is also shared with the next tool on our list, the shapes tool. So we can use this to select the shape we want to add in, and then just click and drag out on the page to create it. So I get my rectangle tool here, so I can add in my rectangle, or if I dial the stroke thickness down here, like so, I can hold down Shift and it will lock the line or the shape to a perfect square for me. We have similar functionality with the Insert Ellipse tool. Switch the color here. We can click and drag out to get our elliptical shape. And while we're drawing it, it does give us those 2 diameter lines if we want to center over a specific point, say with the grid here, or I can use it again to circle my answer. And holding down Shift while using it will lock it to a perfect circle, like so. So I can add that in, center it to get a specific diameter using the grid here. Then our triangle tool, we can click, drag out, and we get an isosceles triangle. And while we're drawing it, it does give us the angle at each corner if we need to set that to a specific value for the question. And holding down Shift locks it to a right angled triangle. So I can sketch this out for Pythagoras theorem trigonometry, or in this case, I'll actually use the select tool to move the drawing. So we have an example of our ball rolling down the ramp here. And lastly, we have the insert line tool. So this lets us draw a far more accurate line than the rough one we can create with the drawing tool. So while I'm creating it here, we get the angle at each end of the line. So I can draw that out. We can also hold down Shift while using it, and it will lock the line to 22.5-degree increments. So we can use that to keep the line perfectly set to those angles, which is really helpful if I'm, for example, drawing the axes here. And once again, using the select tool to hover over it, we do get some customization options. So I can change the line thickness and transparency. But this little hamburger menu is the more interesting one, as that lets us add arrows to either end of the line, as well as change it from just a filled straight line into a dotted line. So I can switch one of those off as the ball can't roll uphill, and I can show the direction it would be moving in. Next up, we have the eraser tool. So there's two options for this. The first one, drawings and shapes, will remove any drawings and shapes that we've added to the document, but will leave all other annotation types intact. So if you've got a mixture of drawings and text boxes on the page, or markup and drawings around the text in the document, you can make corrections to the drawings without changing any of the other annotations. But we do have an all annotations option if you just need to clear everything off of the page as you move. The next tool on our list is the Add Media tool. So we can use this to insert images and videos from our computer, Google Drive, or if we don't have an example to hand, we can Google image search for an example image, search YouTube for an example video. So if I jump into my drive here to find the image I'm looking for, it asks me to sign in, select my student account. And then once that authorizes, I can select the image. So in this case, I'll add in our world map here. Click and drop that onto the page. I can expand it out so I have all the area I might want to annotate in. And then I could use the shapes tool here to circle where I am. So I'm here in the North Island in Auckland. And then we can further annotate it. So the example Aiden and I often use for these demos is the route that Magellan takes from Portugal around the world. So marking off the points he stops off in the coast here, up and round, up to the point where he gets mutinied here. So we can draw that on. We can use the drawing and shapes option to correct any of the lines that are a little off without deleting the image. And this is where the screen capture comment might be useful. So you could have your students talk you through the ports he stopped at, rather than just say giving a text summary underneath. And just to show what the video looks like when it's added in, I'll jump to my YouTube here, search Kami, select the What is Kami video, click and drop that to insert it onto the document. I can expand or shrink the player as needed, and then we just hit play, and the students are able to watch that inside of the document without having to open it in a new tab. And one thing I'll mention, just because it's a question that does come up occasionally, is both the Google image search and YouTube video search have Safe Search Force enabled by default, and there is no way for the students to switch that off. And then lastly, for Add Media, we have the stickers tool enabled. So we have these wonderful stickers that our creative team put together for grading. So we can easily select any of these to drop in for the student. So we've got our standard, excellent work, great idea, well done. And the creative team's favorite is the stellar, but my favorites in the subject specific ones. So we have our creative genius, English champ, history expert, and my personal favorite is the Kami math wizard. And the last tool here is the signature tool. So this allows us to add in an image of our signature to sign off on the document. So I can upload an image if I have a photo or scan of my signature readily available. I can draw the signature on my device if I'm working from a touch screen or I'm happy to draw it with the mouse. And if those first two options don't work for us, but we have a smartphone or tablet handy, I can draw the signature on there by emailing a link to it with this option and then uploading it back into Kami. So if I draw my signature here, like so, and please excuse my poor handwriting, I can hit upload. It'll add our new signature into the signature menu here. So we can select any of the ones we've previously added if we just want to quickly reuse one. It does currently add the new signature to the bottom of the list, which means I've got a lot to scroll through given how often I do these demos. But we get our new signature here. I can click insert, drop that onto the page here, and we've then signed off on the document. Now, one feature that we should have, but that's currently got a minor error that's preventing it from working, is when you hover over the signature tool, it's supposed to give you a quick select menu of the last two items you loaded in. So you can easily re-add your signature if you're signing off on each student's work without having to go through that menu. Or if you have a good work stamp, Bitmoji, or similar image you want to add in, you can upload that into the signature tool like I've done just to show with the duckling here, and then insert that and use the signature quick select to use it as kind of a custom stamp tool. And that has pretty much covered all of the tools. So are there any questions, things you'd like me to show off again before I jump into the grading features? I should just see if there's any questions in the chat. Can you record portions of the lesson on an iPad? Yes, so the two things you need to do there are in the settings on iPad. You just need to go into settings, and I believe it's one of the experimental features. Okay, so it's not here. I think it might be something that we'd need to enable. So if you can reach out to support, there's a feature that can be enabled to allow you to record those videos on the iPad in the Kami comments, though that can take a couple of minutes to process just while it processes for iOS format. Or if you record it as a video and then save it to your Google Drive, you can insert it using the Add Media tools. So I could insert the video from Drive instead of searching through YouTube. So that is possible. Just see if there are any others in the chat. And alrighty, in that case, we've got our document annotated and ready to go here. So I scroll back up to the top, just so I've got this ready for when I'm grading. I can hit save here, where we've now also got the turn in button. We can see we have the file saved in the Google Drive for the classroom, and we've got all of the changes saved. So Kami auto saves back to Drive every 3 minutes. But if we have got any changes outstanding and we need to force them to save manually, we can hit the Save Now button here, or when we hit Turn In for the file, it does one last save to Google Drive to catch any last-minute changes. Turns that file in. We can now or it's been submitted, so the student can unsubmit it if they need to make other changes, but they cannot edit it while it's submitted, and we can see that they've done that inside a classroom itself. So now if I switch back to our teacher side here, go to the student work page, we get our one turned in file and the two that are still assigned. So clicking on the student's turned in work here, the last feature the extension gives us for the integration is this grade with Kami window. So when we have this option ticked, we replace the classroom PDF viewer with a Kami window. So I can view my students' work as it would have been created in Kami here, so I can read through, see the annotations and comments that they've added. And then once I've finished viewing that, it also gives me access to all of the Kami tools to start marking up their work. So I can use my drawing tool as a red pen to mark the questions that they have, or in this case, haven't answered. I can add in comments. So if I go to the comment they've added here, I can tell them, in this case, I might want to go with great work, but they've missed several of the comments. Now, one of the new features we have available is an annotation bank that lets us save any comments we've created and then re-add them to the student's work rather than having to type them out individually if you've got the same line of feedback you're having to give for the same question multiple times. So that's banked here. And then to create one of those banked annotations, we'd simply make a new comment. So I'd call this, in this case, answers are blank. Yep, so I can type, was there an issue answering them? So we can add that in. Once we've added the comment, there'll be this little box icon in the top right of the comment. Clicking on that adds it to the annotation bank. And then when we start typing again, that will reappear and we can select it here to re-add it. And you can do this with audio and video comments as well. So if I click here and I think it's answer, yes, so missed questions, I can add that audio comment in and you'd save it the exact same way and you'll just give it a title when it asks you to save it. And that's what you'd type to bring it up to insert. So we can add in our feedback, any comments we need to, and then when we're finished, I can go to the Add Media tool here. In my case, I'll drop in a sticker and I'll just sign it using my drawing tool here as the signature quick select isn't working. And then our student's work is ready to be returned. And before I give it the grade and return it to the student, I do want to show off in the bottom right here, we have these two user icons, one for the teacher and one for the student. The reason that those are visible is this is actually considered a shared file between the teacher and student once both of them have opened it into Kami. So if I go back to my student side here, you can see the annotations I added as the teacher have already synced over. So that means that the student will see the feedback we give them as soon as they reopen the file. And it also means if you need to work with them on a one-to-one synchronously to walk them through where they might have been a little off track, you can actually get them in Google Meets, Zoom, or in class, have them open the file up on their device, open it on yours, and then add those annotations. And the student would actually see them appearing on the document in pretty close to real time. And it also means that if the student's making corrections, you can watch them make them to see how they get on, which also plays very nicely into one of the other features we have in the kind of grading viewer here, which is we can jump to any of the other students' assigned work, as Classroom lets you view the files in that Your Work section. So I can open up Aiden's student's work here in Kami to check how he's getting on. So we'll open this up so we can view his work. We can check how he's going even before he's turned it in. So if we wanted to check in partway through the week to see how he's kind of faring with the assignment. And then if it looks like he's struggling, because opening it here will put it into that same collaborative state, we can't see the user icons here because the student hasn't opened the file. I could still go in, add a voice comment here to give him a hint for question 1 if it looks like he's struggling to answer it. And then when that's saved to the document here, when the student opens the file up again, he's got that comment to listen to get back on track. And just to show here, we get the toggle sidebar option. So this has a couple of overview pages that can help when we're grading. So the first one here is the thumbnail view that gives a preview of each page in the document, as well as the number of annotations on the page in the bottom right. So we can use that to get an idea of where the students focus their efforts for annotating, but this does count both the teacher and student annotations. So the one that's quite a bit more useful is the annotation summary. So this gives a full overview of every annotation in the document and shows us for those annotations the user that created it, the annotation type, the page that the annotation is on, ordered from the top of the page down, and when you hover over it, it gives you the exact date and time the annotation was created or last edited. So we can use that to easily get an idea of how long the student's been working on the document for, if they have maybe focused on a specific annotation type or a specific section, or if everything was just added 10 minutes before they turned the file in. And while we're scrolling through, I can click on an annotation in the summary here, and it will jump me to the annotation's location on the document. And just to show the last option here, this is the annotation bank. So we can preview all of our kind of banked annotations. If there's any we don't want to keep, so maybe I don't need that good work one, or I want to remove some of the audio recordings or edit a text comment we've added, we can make those changes here and then just start adding them in as normal. And that, I think, pretty much covers the classroom integration. So are there any questions, anything you'd like me to show off again? Otherwise, I'll quickly show the document preparation tool I mentioned, and then I'll let you go because I know I've been talking for quite a bit now. Alrighty, and if you do have questions, feel free to just unmute and yell them at me. But I'm going to jump into my teacher drive here. So if I go into my demo template assignments here, another feature the extension lets us do is right click on a file in Drive, go open with, annotate with Kami. So I can add that in, and we can see I have a far more heavily edited version of the file that I could push out to my students. So I could add any other comments or annotations I want to on the screen here. And then once it's ready to go, I can hit save to make sure the changes are saved back to the file in Drive, and then push it out to my students for them to start working on. But the tool I want to show off here is under the menu, where we have this split and merge document option. I can use that to open the file I'm currently working on into the Kami split and merge tool. So this is one of our tools for customizing PDFs beyond just adding annotations. So it's going to open up and load the file I was working on here, but I can also add files from Google Drive or the device local storage if I've opened it up rather than by loading a document, accessed it through the split and merge button on the main page of Kami. So I can load in the file I need, and when I hit next, it will let me kind of see an overview of the pages in the document, and then I can actually select some of them. So I know that in this copy, it always takes a while to load the blank pages we've added, but I've got the lined page here and one with a map added for the students to annotate. So if I drag that along, I can rearrange the pages so that we now have ELA exercise, lined paper for some note taking, and then the map page at the end. I can rearrange that further. So I've now got reading, note page, questions. Or I can select all of the pages for the ELA exercise here, drag them down into a separate row, and then export that out as a new document. So I can split larger files up into smaller ones. So I've got an ELA exercise and a math exercise here, but you could also use this with a textbook PDF if you wanted to just split out a chapter to assign to the students. Or if you have a large group of, say, 40 or so worksheets from an online resource that you've downloaded, you could just split out the two you want to assign to the students. We can also rotate the pages here. So I could rotate it if I wanted this grid page to be landscape to give the students some extra space for graphing exercises. And when you rotate it in split and merge and export it, it will change that page. So the orientation it's in here is the default whenever the file's opened. So this is how you'd permanently rotate a page if that's needed. And also we have the merge mode here, which lets us do this exact process in reverse. So instead of breaking larger files into smaller ones, we can merge multiple files together into one large one. So if I grab the essay Google Doc here and the field trip slides file, I can select those. And just like I mentioned for adding them to a classroom assignment, if you split and merge those pages into a file here, it will convert them into PDF format so the Kami tools can work on it. So I could grab our essay pages here and add them to the back of the document as an extra resource, and then maybe take the things I've learned page and add it to the front for the students to complete once they finished the work. So we've got our pages added from the different files here. And then when we're ready, we just hit export. We can download it to our device, open it into Kami if we want to start annotating immediately, or we can save it to our Google Drive. If you are going to annotate it for assigning out later, I do recommend saving it to Google Drive first, just because currently opening Kami doesn't automatically save a copy of the file, and it also has a weird bug where it won't bring the file name through correctly. So it opens as like an open, I think, -URI and then a string of numbers and letters. So saving it to our Google Drive's the easiest option if we want to keep annotating. So I'll put that into split and merge output and export it out as our new file. And just while I'm doing that, I'll just clarify that number one, any annotations you make on a document prior to splitting and merging it are carried over on the pages we split and merge. And this does not affect the original file in any way. So I won't go back to the Google Slides file or the copy of the ELA and math demo and find any of the pages missing. So this is just a preview of what it looks like. And then when we export it, it makes a new copy of each page in our new file. Split and merge output, right click, open with, annotate with Kami. So we can see we have our Google slide page, our ELA exercise with the extra questions added, our lined paper page here, the questions, our rotated page and split and merge, and then the essay pages added at the end, and we've got our new custom file. And that, I think, is everything I can kind of show off in terms of the Kami features. So once again, are there any questions? Anything you want me to show off again before we wrap up? Or are you just sick of my voice at this point and would like a chance to go and test it out yourselves? Alrighty, any other questions? Michael, was I able to clarify that question you had about iPad well enough? Alrighty, in that case, thank you very much for your time, everyone. If you do have any questions going forward, I'm just going to throw our support email into the chat for you. So support@kamiapp.com. That's the best way to reach out. So any questions you have going forward, any kind of technical issues you run into, or if you've got any feedback once you start using it with your class, feel free to reach out through there, and either myself, Etienne Paru, or